Hey, thanks for clicking on the video. Today I've got another Premier Hunter build that's poised to get extremely strong when Edge of Fate launches next month. This build makes use of the currently extremely overpowered Lord of Wolves shotgun, gives this exotic a substantial damage increase, and gives ourselves incredible survivability through the prismatic kit, all with a 30% damage buff on the horizon. Now, before we get into the build, as usual, there are timestamps and a dim link down below, all for your convenience. And if you enjoyed this video and this build, a subscription would be greatly appreciated. And if you're a returning viewer wanting to engage with the community more, then there's also a Discord server link down below where I would love to see you there. But YouTube stuff aside, now straight to the build. The first thing we got to talk about is, of course, Lord of Wolves, our exotic weapon of choice. I've spoken about this shotgun a number of times on my channel, and I'm sure you've used it as it is currently the strongest weapon in the entire game. And that's including that it has already been nerfed. But even if it were to get nerfed again, it's still so strong that you'll be able to make use of this build in all in-game content just fine. So looking at this shotgun, we have its exotic perk, which reads, fires a powerful short-range burst of solar damage. You can see that in all of the gameplay. This shotgun shoots like a pulse rifle rather than a normal shotgun with pellets, but this isn't all that makes it feel exotic. Its second perk handles a lot of that exotic feeling and got reworked at the beginning of the season, which reads, when firing from the hip, this weapon shoots in full auto and damage and fire rate are increased, but accuracy and range are decreased. We can see this easily through gameplay where ADS we fire like normal, and then when we decide to hip fire, it shoots considerably faster. And for our range, we can see hipfire hitting actual immunes, which forces you to be relatively close to your target. ADS doesn't really run into that issue and has actually quite surprising effective range, especially being considered a shotgun. But where things get insane is in the increased damage between the two versions. An ADS shot to Carl's head hits for 9.7k and a body shot is 5.2k. When we hipfire, that goes up to 11.7k per crit and 7.3k per body. That comes out to about a 20% increase to precision damage and a 40% increase to body damage. In a single magazine from a hip-fired Lord of Wolves, you're dealing 219,000 damage on the lowest end and 351,000 if you can hit all crits. And taking a peek from the rest of this build, this can go all the way up to 526,000 damage. That's insane from one magazine, which as you're seeing is emptied so quickly. Now, the last part of Lord of Wolves is its reworked catalyst that bolsters it even more. Here it reads, increases reload speed and stability, while Release the Wolves is active, damaging targets with this weapon applies Scorch when aiming down sights, defeating a target spreads Scorch to those nearby. You can look at that here with ADS kills essentially giving us Incandescent, the solar perk, and then the hipfire shots add Scorch just for damage until ignition happens, with this being after about 8 or 9 shots. And yes, that does mean it gets even more single target DPS when in hipfire mode, with that ignition happening faster the more players that are using it. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, Lord of Wolves is just incredibly broken, and you can use this weapon with whatever build you want because it is just that good. But who doesn't like to make overpowered things even more overpowered? Which brings us to our exotic armor piece of choice, Mask of Bakris. This is a little surprising, as I would say a lot of people don't know about a secret mechanic with this exotic. But first we have a description that reads, while you have a stasis super equipped, your dodge becomes a longer range, faster moving shift that partially cloaks you during use. After shifting, your stasis and arc weapons deal increased damage for a short time. And in the description, it says nothing about solar weapons, shotguns, or even explicitly Lord of Wolves, but that's just because it's hiding it. If we first look at the new dodge that we get from this exotic, in-game, it overrides whatever dodge we have equipped, although the effect of our equipped dodge still happens. When we use our class ability, we will kind of blink away with much farther range than a standard dodge, and then we'll reappear. At this point, we get the light shift debuff on the left side of our screen. While this debuff is active, the aforementioned weapons deal more damage in the form of a ×4 surge. But the debuff also prevents us from regaining any dodge energy at all, whether that be naturally or through mods or something like that. Now again, it only stated arc and stasis weapons in the description, but if we just go ahead and equip Lord of Wolves and then use our blink, light shift activates and we get a solar weapon surge ×4. This is a free 25% damage increase. And I guess the reason it exists is so that we can fulfill the Fallen Captain cosplay. But for us, that means we can pair the strongest exotic weapon in the game with a free massive damage boost. But now before we move into our subclass and armor and all that, I need to talk about an upcoming buff to the Mask of Bakris exotic. According to a recent twid, effects are now active when either an arc or stasis super is equipped. Reworked light shift. no longer provides a non-stacking surge damage bonus, now grants plus 10% damage for eligible weapons, stasis weapons, arc weapons, and Lord of Wolves per stack. Stacks up to 3 times. While active, weapon final blows grant class ability energy. Now what does this exactly mean for us? Well, Mask of Bakris' damage increase will be going up from 25% to 30% on the high end. However, this does require the use of multiple dodges to gain multiple stacks. This also seems to indicate that the way Bakris works is just completely changing, as rather than locking us out of regaining dodge energy, we are now increasing the amount of energy we get. So when Edge of Fate launches, rather than using one dodge to get maximum benefit, you'll be spamming dodges as often as possible, keeping up an even greater benefit. I should also note that decoupling this buff from surges means that you can stack it with our current surge mods as well, meaning our max damage is way higher than what it is now. So while I do recommend using this now for the rest of the episode and things like Ride of the Nine leading up to Edge of Fate, it's only going to get stronger. And moving on from our exotics, we have our subclass. Starting with our supers, we need to run a stasis super right now or an arc super in the future. But really here in our prismatic kit, Silence and Squall is our only option. The super actually does really good damage and has fantastic con control and ad clear, so don't sleep on it. Then next we have our class ability, which I opt to run Gambler's Dodge, that way I can refund my melee. For that melee, I really like Threaded Spike. This is because it does good damage as well as severing enemies, which is extremely important in the endgame, keeping you and your allies alive. For Grenade, I'm on Grapple Grenade because it's just simply too fun and very potent. Then for our aspects, the first one that I chose was Winter's Shroud. This aspect will cause our blink to release a slowing burst. Whenever we do slow something, it also increases our dodge regen. At the moment, this doesn't immediately do anything due to the lockout caused by Bakris. But in Edge of Fate, it will be extremely strong, causing us to get our dodge back very quickly. And the second aspect is the one that every hunter runs, and that is Stylish Executioner. This aspect will cause us to go invisible when we kill any enemy that has any debuff. In the game, we can see that Lord of Wolves applies Scorch, it's invisible, our dodge applies Slow, killing those enemies makes us invisible, our melee applies Sever, makes us invisible, and our grapple applies Unravel. Guess what? It makes us invisible. So, as you can see, we will just always be going invisible, which in the end just makes us that much harder to kill. Then on to our fragments. The first one is Facet of Hope. This fragment causes our dodge to regen faster when we have any elemental buff active, so all the time. Then we have Facet of Purpose. This fragment is so that we can get one of those elemental buffs whenever we pick up an Orb of Power. In the case of having Silence and Squall equipped, that elemental buff will always be Frost Armor, which is a nice source of DR. And after that, we have Facet of Protection, which is another source of DR. Then we have Facet of Dawn, so that our melee makes us radiant to increase our weapon damage output. And then the final fragment is Facet of Blessing, so that melee kills trigger health regeneration. But this is also where I need to note that this build will be receiving one less fragment slot when Edge of Fate launches, so in that case, just drop Facet of Blessing. Now moving on from our subclass, we have our other weapon choices. Seeing as Lord of Wolves is our exotic of choice, there is a no-brainer option for our kinetic slot. And while it is kind of boring for me to recommend it, I'm going to say it anyways, and that is using Tenacious Mastery. This combo of special weapons is the most powerful combo in the entire game. Tenacious Mastery can regenerate Dark Transcendence energy extremely quickly. Lord of Wolves does the other side. This essentially guarantees maximum uptime on Transcendence. Also, with this combo of weapons and subclass, we can handle every single champion without needing the artifact. As for our heavy weapon, use whatever. If you're damaging something like a boss from a very far distance, then run something that exceeds Lord of Wolves' damage range. Now after our weapons, we have our armor, and the decisions here will be changing a lot when the DLC launches thanks to the new armor stat system. Though currently our stats are resilience first and foremost, then discipline, then mobility, as high as you can get it. And then for the changes here coming in Edge of Fate, the main stat will likely be class. This is so we can spam our dodge as much as possible, and then after that, probably super, so we can have max ability uptime there, and then lastly melee, so that when we do use our Gambler's Dodge, it actually refunds the full thing. Now moving on, we have our armor mods. This will also be different when Edge of Fate drops, as we're getting some changes there. But currently, on our helmet, we run a Solar and Stasis Siphon for orbs from weapons. On our arms, we run a Heavy-Handed to get orbs from melee ability kills, including our Grapple Grenade, an Impact Induction so that we get a little bit of grenade energy back whenever we deal melee damage, and a Focusing Strike for some dodge energy back when we're doing the same. And then our chest is always just going to be for resists. Make sure they match whatever activity you're playing. And on our legs, we will have a recuperation so that whenever we pick up an orb, we get instant health. And then also an innervation so that whenever we pick up an orb, we get a bit of grenade energy back too. And then on our class item, we run Special Finisher for Infinite Special, Powerful Attraction to pick up orbs whenever we blink, and then Proximity Ward so that we become invincible when doing finishers. Now lastly, before the gameplay loop, we have the Artifact. The only mods that actually apply to this build are Vile Weave, so Tangle Sever, 2 Shreds, so severed enemies become unraveled, Horde Shuttle, because of that, so unravel enemies spawn Threadlings, and then finally Limit Break, so our super does more damage whenever we cast it while we have Frost Armor. But with this build being usable and mainly focused for the next DLC, we don't need to worry about these too much. Then to finish us off, we have the gameplay loop. This loop usually starts with us grappling into some enemies or throwing our threaded spike. Both of these will make us radiant, at which point we want to use our blink. Coming out of the blink, you will have your melee refunded, so you can use it again if you need to reproc radiant. But otherwise, you now have 25% more solar damage output and a 20% weapon buff. Use both of these to combo with Lord of Wolves to absolutely nuke whatever you're looking at, whether that be some trash ads in a group or one big guy like a champion or boss. Once you've erased your target, do note that you need to wait a little bit to begin generating dodge energy. While waiting, use your weapons and other abilities in your kit to proc Facet of Hope, so that when you can regen dodge energy, it's coming back as fast as possible. Also remember that when the DLC drops, rather than waiting here, you will actually be trying to get kills to increase your dodge regen. Realistically though, now that your dodge is back, you just repeat the loop. Whenever you have Transcendence or your super, you can pop it. Neither of these are required to do things with Lord of Wolves. So yeah, ultimately the loop comes down to dodging, killing stuff with your overpowered shotgun, and then just waiting to be able to do that again. But don't get it mistaken, while you're waiting, Lord of Wolves is still overpowered in its base form, and the rest of your kit gives you massive survivability, keeping you in the fight. And I think that's the whole build. It's super simple, and it's really cool to pretend to be an Overload captain. And of course, there is a dim link down below, so you can just grab it for yourself. And as usual, thank you for getting this far into the video. Your viewership is greatly appreciated. If you want to support me and support the channel, a like, a comment, a subscription goes a very long way. Joining the Discord also lets me know that you want to engage with the community further. If you want to support me and support the channel, but you can't think of a comment down below, the true Lord of Wolves. And with that, as usual, I hope you are having a great day, and I hope to see you around.